From weak, frail characters to absolute legends in the Jujutsu world that their names echoed throughout history. These are all 16 final forms in Jujutsu Kaisen, beginning with none other than the legend himself, Gojo Satoru. Gojo was the first person in approximately 400 years to inherit both the limitless inherited technique and the 6 eyes. Because of that, after he was born, the balance of power shifted. That resulted in Gojo having a bounty worth over 100 million put on his head and was even targeted by bounty hunters. However, they were ultimately powerless before him. Just by staring at people that were observing him from a distance, it was enough to frighten them and make them realize that this kid is in a league of his own. At one point, Toji Zeni of the Zenin clan went to see Satoru. While tailing the child, Satoru noticed Toji's presence and turned around to look at him, surprising Toji. This marked the first and last time anyone was aware of Toji's presence while he was standing behind them, as Toji possessed 0 cursed energy due to his heavenly restriction. But even like that, Gojo was still able to sense him because of the 6 eyes that allowed Gojo to perceive the world in a different way. It gave Gojo superhuman perception, allowing him to see cursed energy in extreme detail, perceive the world as flows of energy, and understand cursed techniques instantly. Growing up, Gojo was considered the honored one, and even though he did not accomplish all techniques he did in the end from the get-go, he kept getting stronger and stronger as time passed. From learning how to use red and reverse curse technique to having his limitless on all the time and automatically creating a barrier around him that's almost impossible to get through, all the way to combining techniques to create purple or breaking records that the Jujutsu world never thought were possible. For example, casting Black Flash at will is considered impossible, unless you're Gojo Satoru, of course. Moving faster than certain barriers is also considered impossible, unless you're Gojo Satoru. The prison realm is supposed to seal anyone on the spot and then continue as if nothing happened, unless you're Gojo Satoru, and cause the prison realm to be immovable for quite some time. Sukuna is supposed to have never felt fear in his life, unless he fights Gojo Satoru. In time, Gojo reached his pinnacle of strength, which came during his fight against Sukuna. Domain battle after domain battle, hand-to-hand combat, reverse curse technique after reverse curse technique. Gojo ended up losing, but only after Sukuna had to resort to using the help of Maharaga, Agito, and according to some fans, even Gege himself. This was just our first point of the video, and we still have 15 more left to analyze. And the next one is Ryomen Sukuna. When it comes to how Sukuna was introduced in the series, he had 2 arms and basically just used Yuji's body and did not have a standalone body for himself. Over 1,000 years ago, an infant Ryomen Sukuna resided in the womb of the starving woman that was his mother, alongside his twin. Sukuna, not wanting to starve himself, consumed his twin, who would later reincarnate centuries down the line, as indicated by Mahito and Sukuna himself. He grew up living a particularly lonely life and was treated as a wretch by others, which instilled him with a motive to seek revenge against them all. As he grew older, Sukuna became a sorcerer and had killed many other sorcerers from the golden age of Jujutsu. Around this time, Sukuna encountered a child named Uraume in the wilderness, surrounded by frozen corpses. Uraume explained that every time he slept, people froze around him, which ended up killing his parents. Intrigued, Sukuna took Uraume to his ruined ice house and ordered him to use his cursed technique to keep his stored meats cold. As Uraume cooked for both of them, Sukuna then inquired if Uraume knew how to butcher and cook humans, remarking that it's considered a delicacy. Before his death, Sukuna was helped by Kenjaku to live on after death by splitting his soul into 20 cursed objects created from his fingers. Despite binding vows being used to preserve their existence in exchange for not doing damage, Sukuna's fingers continued to grow stronger over the millennium, eventually being designated as special grade cursed objects by Jujutsu High. And once Yuji started eating those fingers, well, Sukuna started slowly regaining his power and thus coming back. By the end of the stories, Sukuna ate 19 of his fingers while also supplementing his 20th finger through another means. He ate a mummified corpse, effectively reaching his full power before his fight with Gojo Satoru. This brought his power to roughly 20 fingers worth, plus the extra strength from the corpse, plus the powers and abilities he acquired from using Megumi's body and curse technique. Sukuna's final form, aka his true Heian era incarnation with 4 arms, extra mouth, and perfect body, was activated after his battle with Gojo. By consuming his original remains while in Megumi Fushigaro's body, Sukuna was able to complete the incarnation process and forcibly transform Megumi's body into his own 4-armed, 2-mouthed Heian era form. This transformation allowed him to bypass the need to use reverse curse technique to heal his critically damaged brain and body, effectively restoring him to full power. And now, let's talk about my personal favorite, left, right, good night, Yuji. Upon his birth, Yuji had one of Sukuna's fingers sealed within him by his mother Kaori, who in reality was Kenjaku taking over Kaori's body. As a result of that, Yuji has always been exceptionally strong, with physical capabilities that far exceeded other humans, even without really using any cursed energy. And then when Yuji consumed one of Sukuna's fingers, Sukuna was finally reincarnated. However, given Yuji's nature, he was capable of controlling Sukuna and thus not letting him take over. As time passed, Yuji enrolled in Jujutsu High and learned how to use cursed cursed energy and cursed technique. Notably, Yuji was capable of using black flash at will and repeatedly one after the other, something thought possible only by Gojo Satoru. During the final fight with Sukuna, Yuji made a huge leap in power, where he learned how to use a lot of major power-ups. For example, reverse curse technique. He regenerated his body after suffering a cleave from Sukuna. He later used it to heal the wounds he received from 2 of Sukuna's dismantle slashes. He also learned simple domain, an anti-domain technique Yuji learned by switching souls with Atsuya Kusakabe. It is used to disable a domain's guaranteed hit effect by neutralizing its barrier. Yuji activated it in response to Sukuna's malevolent shrine, allowing him to resist its slashes for almost 99 seconds before finally crumbling. And of course, the most important power-up, domain expansion. Due to his replacement training with Kusakabe, Yuji learned the basics of barrier techniques, allowing him to cast domain expansion. His domain expansion is named Hometown Domain. In essence, it perfectly recreates his hometown, including landmarks familiar to him, such as a local statue, a park that he played in, a department store, a farm he visited, etc. The sure hit effect of this domain attacks Yuji's targets with his soul-rending dismantle without requiring physical contact, something he learned from Sukuna while using his body to cast domain expansion himself. In Jujutsu Kaisen Mojulo now, which takes place 68 years after the final battle with Sukuna, we learn that Yuji is also immortal. Not only that, he is considered humanity's strongest. Kugisaki Nobara. Kugisaki arrived in Tokyo from a rural Japanese village. When she was introduced, she was already a rather skilled cursed user ranked at grade 3. Her curse technique is the straw doll technique, a versatile ability using a hammer, nails, and straw dolls to attack enemies, based on the traditional Ushin no Tokimairi, aka what is known as a voodoo doll. Key aspects include resonance, connecting a target via a piece of them to a straw doll to inflict mirror damage, and hairpin, detonating embedded nails with cursed energy for explosive force, allowing remote attacks and damage amplification. She can also use black flash and demonstrates high pain tolerance and tactical use of her technique, even injuring herself to gain an advantage. During the events of Shibuya incident, she was touched by Mahito's transfiguration and left for seemingly dead. However, in later stages of the manga, she returns, featuring an eye patch on her eye. She returned after a very long coma to assist in the fight against Sukuna. She helped Yuji by using her resonance with one of Sukuna's fingers for a decisive blow. In the events of JJK Mojulo, we see her being rather old, but still alive and well. Maki Zenin is next. Maki was born with heavenly restriction, and what does that mean? Her body received very limited cursed energy, even less than the average non-sorcerer. She couldn't see curses without glasses imbued with cursed energy, the most basic requirement for someone to be considered a sorcerer. On the other hand, her twin sister did possess cursed energy. As a child, just like in Toji's case, Maki was discriminated against by members of her own family. As a Jujutsu sorcerer, her own family held her back from being promoted, despite being worthy of higher ranks. During her fight with Miwa, despite being typically only a grade 4 sorcerer, Maki absolutely dominated the fight, making Miwa wonder, how can the sorcerer not be at least a grade 2 sorcerer? In Shibuya arc, she did have some important fights, but her full power was nowhere near its peak. She almost died to Jogo, but she managed to escape with just a pretty big scar on her face. Fast forward a few chapters, and Maki is heading to the Zenin clan to collect curse tools for the upcoming battles. However, the Zenin clan members were not particularly happy with her returning home. Even her own father did not hide his anger. He went on to blame her and Mai for not becoming the head of the Zenin clan, as according to him, they were nothing but failures. After she attacked her, she threw her inside a room full of cursed spirits, along with her soon-to-die sister. There, Maki and Mai have a spiritual encounter, where Mai reveals the reason Maki was not stronger all these years. Mai explained to Maki that cursed techniques treat identical twins as one individual, meaning that even if Maki were to train extremely hard, she would not be able to get stronger, as Mai was holding her back, since the benefits of the heavenly restriction were nullified since Mai was able to use cursed energy. Hence, once Mai passes away, all cursed energy was eradicated from the binding vow. But in simpler words, what does that all mean? With her death, Mai took with her all the cursed energy between them, making Maki only the second known person to have escaped cursed energy completely after Toji. And the result of that, the birth of an absolute beast of a sorcerer, one that very much resembled Toji. Maki received a power boost so massive that not even the whole Zenin clan was able to stop her. Maki went on to absolutely butcher her father, the entirety of elite sorcerer squads, and of course, her entire clan, leaving no Zenin in that house still breathing. And let's not forget, we're speaking about one of the strongest families in the entire world. For one person to completely overpower them with nothing but cursed tools and physical prowess, this feat speaks on its own. However, this was not the end of Maki's advancement in terms of strength, as she's still missing something in order to reach the level of Toji. Fast forward to the Culling Game arc, where Naoya's cursed spirit appears. And how does that happen? Well, in the world of Jujutsu Kaisen, whenever someone is killed, this must be with the use of cursed energy. Otherwise, there's a possibility of the dead returning as a cursed spirit. Maki, having no cursed energy, basically punched Naoya to death, resulting in in him returning as a powerful curse after his death, being unable to defeat Naoya's spirit. A new character by the name of Mio offers guidance to her. With the help of some sumo practice in the form of Jujutsu ability, Maki returns to the battlefield stronger than ever. She can now see curses even without glasses. She can now evade the attacks of a cursed spirit, moving with supersonic speed, and she's now, at least in a sense, immune to domain expansions. As 1, the domains no longer recognize her as a target, and 2, she can freely enter and exit these domains. This allowed her to stab Naoya in the back in a similar fashion as Toji stabbing Gojo in the back. Maki is now comparable to Toji Zenin. And since we mentioned Naoya Zenin, let's check at his case as well. Naoya Zenin was born the youngest of Naobito Zenin's sons. Having inherited his father's projection sorcery, he was considered the most promising of his children, and was constantly praised as a genius from a young age, conditioning him to believing his own superiority and being his father's successor. At some point as a child, Naoya heard about Toji and his complete lack of cursed energy. Hoping to mock his cousin for his condition, Naoya went to visit Toji, only to be utterly astonished by his strength and physique, which he came to respect. Eventually, Naoya rose to the position of the head of the Hei, an elite unit within the Zenin clan composed of sorcerers ranked semi-grade 1 or above. When Maki was still in the clan, Naoya bullied her for her low levels of cursed energy. But, well, let's just say that Maki more than took her revenge for that, which is exactly what caused Naoya's final form, Vengeful Cursed Spirit. He no longer has a human shape. Instead, his body is large and long like a caterpillar. He retains human-like arms, but the face of the worm-like body is covered in a mask shaped like a star with 6 holes. Although barely recognizable, Naoya's human face can protrude from one of these holes. This form was only Naoya's cursed womb state, and he soon evolved. His fully realized cursed form resembles a, well, let's just say tragic irony given the fact that he himself was looking down on women. As a cursed spirit, Naoya retains his human projection sorcery, but enhances it with innate cursed spirit powers, flight, body control in the form of tendrils, and a potent domain expansion called Time Cell Moon Palace that applies the 24 frames per second rule to target cellular level, causing massive damage. Ultimately, he was defeated by Maki Zenin once again. Moving on to Mahito. Mahito is a special grade cursed spirit born from human resentment. His cursed technique, Idol Transfiguration, allows him to manipulate the souls of living beings through touch, but this ability is negated if the victim's soul is protected. A nihilistic and cruel character, he seeks to destroy humanity. But, well, Yuji had other plans, let's say. His signature ability allows him to reshape the souls of others by physically touching them with his hands. This can be used to create various weapons, shapeshift, make clones, or inflict fatal, unhealable damage. His domain expansion, self-embodiment of perfection, allows him to use Idol Transfiguration instantly on anyone within his domain without needing to touch them. After understanding the true essence of his own soul, he is able to move on to his final form, known as the Instant Spirit Body of Distorted Killing. It's a much more powerful and physically different version of himself. His power is significantly boosted, allowing him to create shockwaves with his hands that can break the ground. He retains his Idol Transfiguration ability, which allows him to manipulate the souls of living beings. But luckily, he's eventually defeated early on before he could progress even further, when his soul is absorbed by Pseudo Geto, aka Kenchaku. Hajime Kashimo is next. 400 years ago, Hajime Kashimo was an elderly yet powerful sorcerer who lived for the sake of fighting strong opponents. However, at some point, he came down with an unspecified fatal illness. On one particular day, after killing some opponents, Hajime was met by Kenchaku, who inquired on if he had fun in his most recent battle, to which Hajime expressed his boredom. He asked Kenchaku on who was the strongest sorcerer he knew, and he answered it was Sukuna from 600 years prior. Kashimo, satisfied with his answer, made a deal with Kenchaku, in that he would agree to be turned into a cursed object and incarnate in a new body 400 years down the line, on the condition that he would be able to fight Sukuna. Hajime retained his one-time special technique in order to use it on Sukuna. Since he could only use this once, of course, he would not use it on anyone other than Sukuna himself, and this technique is called Mythical Beast Amber, which allows him to transform his body into pure energy to manifest electricity, granting immense power, speed, and devastating attacks. When activated, it transforms his body in order to manifest any phenomena that can be created by electricity, which he converts from cursed energy. However, because Mythical Beast Amber causes the user's body to surpass the limits of a human being, it can only be used once, as the user's body will crumble and collapse following the technique's conclusion. And let's just say that even with all this trouble, Sukuna didn't even bother struggling, as he finished Kashimo within half a chapter. And since we've mentioned Kashimo, we had to go to Hakari next. Now, imagine being so goated at gambling, you force an entire country to create a law just for your gambling addiction, which is what came to be known as the Hakari provision in Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo. Kinji Hakari was a student at Jujutsu High, and at some point during that time, we know that he repeated a year. One day, day, Hakari got into a disagreement with a conservative member of the Jujutsu higher-ups and beat them up, leading to him being suspended as a result. Sometime after that event, he formed an underground fight club, which, of course, he used to gamble and even fix games. During the Culling Game arc, we see his ultimate form, which is him hitting the jackpot while in domain expansion. Hakari's domain expansion, Idle Death Gamble, is a pachinko-themed gambling world where he aims for a jackpot by matching 3 numbers for infinite cursed energy and invincibility. When he succeeds, for 4 minutes 11 seconds, he becomes essentially immortal, having his body overflow with infinite cursed energy that also causes his body to automatically perform reverse curse technique and heal itself on the spot. On to Mechamarus. Originally named Kokichi Muta, he was born with a heavenly restriction that physically crippled him and gave him constant pain. In return, his puppet manipulation curse technique had immense range, and he could output cursed energy beyond his limit. Kokichi was taken into Jujutsu High's custody at a young age, with his parents thinking that he died. Kokichi eventually constructed Ultimate Mechamarus, a puppet he named after a robot in an anime he liked. Using this puppet as a proxy, Kokichi enrolled in Kyoto Jujutsu High when he became of age. In time, he entered into a binding vow with Pseudo Geto and Mahito to be their insider informant in exchange for Mahito performing an idle transfiguration on him and healing his body. Once the binding vow was completed and Muta was back into his human body, he went into a fight with the 2 of them using stored cursed energy and puppets he saved for just that moment. Even though his attacks were powerful, he was eventually defeated and killed. Geto Suguru. Geto was a special grade sorcerer and the best friend of Gojo. Together, they were entrusted with a very important mission of protecting Riko Amanai until the time came for her to merge with Tengen in order to become the new star plasma vessel. Geto came to become close to her, and well, let's just say that her execution by Toji while being in front row 4K seat did not sit so well with him. After that event, he fell into a depression and started developing radical ideals, which in time led him into an ideology in which he wanted to exterminate all non-sorcerers in the world so that cursed spirits could stop existing. This led to a confrontation with Yuta and eventually his death. Shortly after his death, his body was taken over by Kenjaku, which resulted in what we already mentioned in our video as Pseudo Geto. Yuta Okotsu. At some point during his childhood, Yuta met Rika Orimoto, and they became fast friends. Yuta was given a promise ring by Rika, and the two promised to marry each other when they grew up. Unfortunately, Rika was killed by a street accident. Yuta then accidentally uttered her name, which subconsciously cursed her soul to remain with him and turned into a vengeful cursed spirit. This cursed spirit became known as the Queen of Curses. Yuta developed into a special grade sorcerer, and even though originally this was mostly because of Rika, let me tell you, as the story progressed, this was mainly because of his own abilities. Even as a newly enrolled student, he managed, even with the help of Rika, to defeat a prime Geto Suguru. Yuta's innate techniques allowed him to copy the innate techniques of people who had their body parts consumed by Rika, with stronger techniques requiring more vital body parts from their respective sorcerers. While connected to Rika, Yuta can utilize the copied innate techniques. He can even use multiple different techniques that he's copied in quick succession. He copied techniques including, among others, Cursed Speech of Inumaki, Sky Manipulation of Uro, Technique Extinguishment of Angel, G War Staff of Bernard, Shrine of Sukuna, and of course, Brain Transplant from Kenjaku. Which brings us to his final form, Yuta in Gojo's body. After Gojo's death and Yuta's severe injuries against Sukuna, the only option left was to perform the surgery in order to move on to Gojo's body, and thus get one more chance against Sukuna, this time while also using the body of Gojo alongside with all his techniques. Even though Yuta was not even close to being as strong as Gojo was while in his body, he still contributed a lot in the efforts to defeat Sukuna. Nanami Kento. Nanami had formerly attended the Sorcerer College, but after graduating, decided to quit being a sorcerer because he found it to be a pain. Nanami then started to work as a businessman, but found that the job only cared about money. After taking care of a cursed spirit that was causing a baker problems, and seeing how we can actually help people by being a sorcerer, Nanami decides to return. He goes on to become a grade 1 sorcerer using a cursed technique called Ratio. It lets him create an imaginary number line on a target and designate a weak point at the 7-to-3 ratio, striking it for massive damage, similar to a critical hit. Unfortunately, he doesn't make it as far, as after some continued fights against Dagon and Jogo, he's left on the brink of death before finally being put down by Mahito. Master Tengen. Tengen is an ancient, immortal Jujutsu sorcerer in Jujutsu Kaisen, known as the Star, pivotal for maintaining Japan's Jujutsu society by creating powerful barrier techniques that protect Jujutsu High and suppress cursed spirits. Originally human, Tengen evolved beyond gender after losing their vessel, becoming a gender-fluid, divine-like entity that resides within the tomb of the Star Corridor, providing crucial support and knowledge to allies like Yuki Tsukumo and Chozo, despite being a non-combatant. During the events of the Culling game, Kenjaku successfully reaches Tengen and he absorbs him, which gave him total control over the barriers and Tengen's abilities. Tengen, as an independent entity, essentially ceased to exist after the fusion. Toji Fushiguro. Toji was an extreme case of heavenly restriction, on one hand having no cursed energy whatsoever, but being one of the strongest characters in Jujutsu Kaisen on the other hand. His physical abilities were honed to the maximum. That's no exaggeration to say that his body was just built different. This resulted in his final form being a situation that could only apply to him. You see, when Ogami used her curse technique in order to summon the body, well, Toji's body simply took over and overrode the soul of her grandson, something that had never happened before. Toji went on to roam around Shibuya, causing everyone around to bear witness to the one who was free, the one who left it all behind, and his overwhelming intensity. Finally, we have Megumi Fushiguro. Megumi was sold by his dad, who was a Fushiguro, into the Zenin family because he had one of the strongest curse techniques available, the 10 Shadows. As a matter of fact, the last head of the Gojo clan who had the combination of 6 eyes and limitless like Gojo was defeated by the previous user of the 10 Shadows that was also part of the Zenin family. This is a technique passed down in the Zenin family which Megumi inherited, allowing him to summon up to 10 potential Shikigami using his shadows as an intermediary, with the strongest one among being, of course, Maharaga. It also grants the user overall manipulation of shadows, allowing Megumi to hide in the shadows or store objects within his own shadow. The fact that Megumi possessed this curse technique made him a target of Sukuna that wanted to use his body and abilities in order to defeat Gojo. So, this is exactly what Sukuna did. He took over his body, killed Megumi's sister, and then went on to butcher a bunch of people, including his teacher, while Megumi could do nothing but watch. Thanks for watching this video. Make sure you like and subscribe, and click on this video next for more awesome anime content. Go on, check it out!